look what I have here. This is a lenticular surface, like a case that you put on your phone that allows your phone to be viewed in 3D. So you can view content on your phone in 3D with the addition of this snap-on. And when I first saw this product, I was quite excited and I had to get one. So here it is. But there's a little bit of a story behind that I'll just share as well, because I didn't get it as soon as I ordered it. Basically, I found various places where it's sold on the internet. The vendor, unfortunately, doesn't sell this version on their vendor site. I'm not sure if that's because this is an older version of my phone. It does sell the Galaxy S10 version of this snap-on, but it no longer seems to, or I don't know if it did in the past, sell the Galaxy S8 version of this. So I had to hunt around on the internet to find another place to purchase this. And it is available on various eBay sites. It is also available from various other suppliers. And I went shopping around to try to find the cheapest product, or the cheapest version of this that I could find. And it was through a company called Cooler that I ended up ordering this. I basically ended up saving myself a couple of euros. But when I ordered it, I didn't hear anything for 6 months. And I gave up on it. I thought I ordered something from a dud site. I basically, there was a chat window on the site. Every now and then I was on the chat window just trying my best to contact the company to see whether my order was still on its way or whether it ever was on its way. And nothing, no responses, nothing. Until I gave up on it at this stage, but I tried again, and lo and behold, I got a response. Somebody answered my chat, and as it turns out, it was due to the COVID situation that they couldn't send things to Australia, and my product, or this product here, this very box, was not sent out yet. My hopes were up at this stage. I thought eventually I might actually get this. So they did say that they would look into it and see whether they can send it to Australia. Now, I'm in Australia, and this product comes from Iceland. So I waited for another couple of weeks, and again didn't hear anything. So I contacted Cooler again, and they said they did actually send it off, but there was problems. And so with all of the issues that we've had, they threw in a freebie. And hey, I'm not complaining. This is a great combination. This here is a snap-on to a mobile phone to be able to take 3D photos. And this here is a screen that allows me to see the content in 3D. What a perfect combination. So let's have a look at the Snap3D. I'll just unbox it and see what's inside. Okay, so it basically looks like a phone cover, just like you would have expected. Doesn't really look much different from other phone covers, other transparent phone covers, but I guess it's got the special property of being 3D, being lenticular. And it's for this phone here, so it's for the Galaxy S8, which is the phone that I have. And let's just see whether it fits on there. Now, it looks like there's some film on here that I need to remove. There it is. The first thing that I notice is that it has a hole right here in the middle. Now that hole would serve a purpose, in that when you reverse this film or this cover and put it on the back, it would allow your camera to still operate without having anything covering it. just like that. Okay, just about that hole that I've mentioned. There's actually two versions of that. There's one that just allows the camera to poke through. There's another that allows the camera, the fingerprint recognition sensor, the heart rate sensor, and the flash to show through. Now, a larger hole, of course, takes away from your 3D viewing experience. Now, the Snap3D has the standard features that you would expect from a mobile phone case. At the bottom, it has access for earphone jacks, speakers, microphone. On the sides, it has buttons that overlay with the buttons on your phone. And on the front, it has access to your microphone and speaker for your mobile phone usage. One thing to note is that the 3D surface, the lenticular surface, does not cover the entire span of the phone. I've got a Samsung Galaxy S8, as I've mentioned, and it's that version that wraps around the edges, and the surface, the lenticular surface, is just the straight part of that. It doesn't curve around those edges, as I've shown here in this picture. I suspect that other phones that don't have that, it would probably cover the entire surface. Okay, so far we have been talking about the mobile phone case in terms that are no different from any other transparent case. But of course, what makes this case so special is that it has a lenticular surface on it, which gives it its magical properties. So to describe those, and I apologize for this, I'm just going to go back to high school physics for just a second. I'm going to go through 3 different cases that are often looked at in a course on optics of what happens when an object is different distances away from the lens. So just bear with me for a moment. If you're familiar with this, feel free to skip over this section. So I will draw here a lens. Okay, so here we are with case number 1. We have an object here, and that produces on the other side an image, and that image is smaller than the object, and the object is further away than 2 focal lengths, and the image is between 1 focal length and 2 focal lengths. So that's what a camera does. So now let's have a look at case number 2. For case number 2, we're going to just erase what we've got here. And we're going to place our object between the focal length and 2 focal lengths of the lens. Okay, so what have we here? We have our object, which is sitting between a focal length and 2 focal lengths of the lens. And we also have a real image on this side that is further away than 2 focal lengths of the lens. And that image is larger than the original object in this case. So now let's have a look at a third case. And this time we have our object between the lens and 1 focal length of the lens. If we have a line that goes through the center of the lens, it basically continues to project through in that same direction. Now that obviously ends up not converging. So with something that's not converging, we have a virtual image if it converges on the other side. And lo and behold, it does. So we basically have a large virtual object on the same side as the actual object. And that is a magnifying glass. That is case number 3. Okay, now I hope I don't disappoint you when I say that lenticular lenses are none of those 3 cases. Lenticular lenses are a special case. Alright, lenticular lenses are the case where, and let me just erase all of this, where the object sits at the focal length. And this time I'm not going to draw an arrow, I'm going to draw a red dot, and you'll see why that is in a moment. Okay, so again, as we have done before, I'm going to draw a parallel line that goes to the lens and goes through the focal point. And as I have done before as well, I will draw another line that goes through the center of the lens and continues to go in that same direction. Now, you'll see that these lines don't converge either on one side of the lens or the other side of the lens. They don't converge at all. That basically means that the entire lens, if you're looking in this direction, will be covered in red. It basically means that you are looking at only this very small part of the object, and it covers the entire lens. Now let's look at what happens if you have another dot here. And again, I will draw that line to the lens, and I will draw another line through the focal point. And similar to before, I will also draw a line through the center of the lens. Now, you will notice that the blue lines have a different angle to the red lines. So if somebody starts to look at the lens from this direction, as opposed to the original direction with the red arrow, the lens will appear completely blue to that person, because they're looking at another part of the object, a very small part of the object, mind you. And this is what makes lenticular lenses so unique. They allow you to look at a very small part of the object and basically gate away everything else on either side of that. That basically allows you to produce different views by looking at different angles to the lens. So in order to do that, a lenticular lens needs to, as I've said before, have the property that it is at the focal point. So you've just seen that I've erased one half of the lens and I've extended it out. A lenticular lens is a sheet. It is not just a single lens. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing a side view of a lenticular sheet. Okay, just magnified to show 3 lenticules. Okay, and the thickness of that sheet is equal to the focal length of that half of a lens, right? And we place our object, which is the screen of a display, back here in this section that I've just made darker. Basically, one eye would, as represented by the red, would be looking at 1 pixel on the screen underneath here, and the blue direction, which is the other eye, would be looking at this blue pixel here, and would therefore be able to produce 2 images, one for the left eye and one for the right eye, and we can then perceive things stereoscopically. Okay, now that we know how we can gate things from the back of a attached lenticular surface, we'll look at how that happens with this Snap3D. Okay, let's have a look at what this looks like under a real lens. So I'm not going to use the Snap3D because the pitch of the lenticular surface is too dense. We've basically got 120 lines per inch on this from what I've measured, and this film here is at 40 lines per inch sheet. So I'm going to be using that so that we can see what's actually happening, because if we were to use this, we'd have to look under a microscope. So to do that, I'm just going to draw a line with this U-Butte ruler here. Probably a bit of an overkill, but it will do. And we'll then put this lenticular sheet over that line. And what you'll see is that it will, as I move the sheet sideways across this line, you'll see it appear and you'll see it disappear. The thing that's worth noting, for me it's disappeared now. If I move my head, it will appear again. And that illustrates this dependence on what angle you look at the lenticular lens, and the ability to get different views depending on what angle you look at. So what I've prepared ahead of time, I'm just going to turn the sheet around. You'll see another line, or what looks like a line, but it's actually two lines. And they are so close together and so fine that it's very hard to distinguish between them from where you're looking. So I'm just going to magnify it for a moment. You can see that there is actually two lines. And again, I'm going to take this lenticular sheet and move it over that. And as I move it, you will see that a blue line appears, followed by a red line. And basically, when we're looking at one of the colors, the other color is gated out. In fact, all of the other areas to the side of that are gated out. You're just seeing a very fine line. It can distinguish between that red line and that blue line. It's so this experiment here is intended to show you that despite the lines being so fine and so close together, it can distinguish between them, and it can create those two different views. So if I look at the line from this angle, or the sheet from this angle, I see a blue line, and if I move my head, then I can see a red line. And that basically allows us to have one view from one direction and another view from another, creating that stereoscopic viewing ability. Now here's something else that's interesting. I'm going to take the Snap3D lens and place it in front of this lens here, and I'm going to turn it. See, as I turn it, there comes a moment when it lines up perfectly with its background. This seems to suggest that the lines on the lenticular surface are slanted at an angle. Now you may be wondering, why is that? We'll have a look at the reason that I think that the lenticules are slanted a little bit later. But for now, let's just take it as a given. And let's have a look at what that means with regards to the number of views that this lens can generate. So to do that, I will do that based on a illustration here. What I'm drawing here is the boundaries of the lenticular lens as best as I can. And from measurements that I've taken, and you can see this image here where I've basically taken a close-up of the lens and tried to establish what that means in terms of the pitch of the lens. And it looks to me like it is a 120 LPI lines per inch lens. And just translating that into microns, a 120 LPI lens translates into 212 microns. Now we also know from specs from the Samsung Galaxy that a pixel is roughly 45 microns. And we've also seen that the lenticular lens is angled. And the angle from what we've observed is about 21 degrees. Which would then mean in the horizontal direction, we would have about 227 microns for each lenticule. Now if we divide the 227 by the size of a pixel, we can see that roughly, and I'm going to do a squiggly line for roughly, that gives us 5 pixels. And given the tolerance of my own measurements, that could be exact, or it could be within a certain tolerance. But we're roughly talking about 5 pixels that fit across in the horizontal direction. And the horizontal direction is of course important in the number of views that we can generate looking with our eyes in the horizontal plane, which is important for generating a stereoscopic view. So that means we can basically have 5 pixels across one lenticule in the lens, which in turn means we have 5 views. So we say that we should be able to get 5 views. But is that really true? We also need to consider something called crosstalk. Now I've covered that in a previous video. It's essentially how much of the other undesired view that you're not looking at, you're getting in your current view. Now, because we have the lenticular sheet angled, it's slanted, we will get some crosstalk. And this happens because, say we put a pixel here, that line may cross over, and we basically get part of that pixel in this view and part of it in this view. So we have to consider these two lenticules as one. This basically means that we have to halve the views that we've come up with, which means we end up with 2.5 views. You can't really have half a view, so we end up with 2 views. And that's perfect because we want to generate a stereoscopic view, and we only need 2 views to do that. So this is fit for purpose. We know that we have 5 pixels that are spanning across one lenticule, and we know that we can only ever see one view from that lenticule. What that means then is that the resolution of the display in the horizontal direction is reduced by 5. So there's a slope on the lens. It's slanted. But what does it actually do for us? Let's take a closer look. So I'm going to draw a lenticule here. And in the middle of that lenticule, just somewhere, not necessarily right in the center because it depends on how we view it, is the part that is made visible by the lenticule. So now just for a moment, I'm going to take you back to what we talked about earlier. Remember, there was a point that was made visible by the lens, and the entire lens was covered with the color of that point. Now in the case of a lenticule, it's a line. The reason that is because a lens is round and acts in 2 directions, whereas the lenticule is lengthwise and only acts in one direction. So it makes an entire line visible instead of just a singular point. Now, just to make it clear, lenticule is 5 pixels. I'm now going to show what happens underneath the lenticular film. So I'm going to draw out the field of pixels. Okay, we know that we can generate 2 views with this. I'm going to show that by highlighting this side in one color. So that's basically one view, this color. And for the other view, I'm going to make it blue. But of course, as I have indicated before, looking through the lens, you're only going to see what happens on that line. That's the part that's made visible. The rest is gated out. But at the top, I'm going to show you what is visible when you look through the lens. So you are going to see that entire lenticule filled with that color that it is crossing. Okay, and that's the case when you look at it from one particular view. Now let's say you shift your eye more to the left, which will cause the line underneath to move to the right. So this is what happens when you start viewing from a different angle. The line now crosses the blue pixels. So with that, we're going to have to erase this. And what you will see when you look through the lens is everything in blue. Okay, so let's put some labels on here. So this here is what you see. Okay, and this here is everything that is underneath the lenticular film. All right, so all is well. This is what you want it to do. But does it actually do that? And the answer to that is that it actually doesn't. What actually happens is that a pixel doesn't look like that. A pixel looks different to that. So I'm going to now draw what an actual pixel looks like. Okay, so I'm going to show you what actually happens at the pixel level. So a pixel doesn't have a uniform color. A pixel actually is made up of generally 3 colors: red, green, green, and blue. All right, so that being the case, what will you actually see through the lens? You won't see that nice blended blue. You will see the red component of that color because the line is going through the red, as you can see. So I have to erase this, and what you will actually end up seeing is red all across here. And then as you slightly move, you will then start seeing just green. And if you slightly move even more, you'll just end up seeing blue. You'll see the subpixel parts, not the actual pixel. So that effect that we like so much, that it gates out certain parts of the underlying display so that you can have a view, is overdone here. We're seeing parts that are so detailed that we don't want to see it in that detail. We want to see the blended version of that pixel, not the individual components of it, which is what's happening right here. So how do we fix that? Let's fix it. Let's see what we can do to improve that. To do that, I'm going to copy all of this. I'm going to leave this in place so you can compare it. And I'm going to copy it across here. Okay, we know that the blended version of that color is something like this, but we know that's not what a pixel looks like. We're actually getting the individual colors. So to fix that, let's slant that. So we're going to slant that by the angle that we've observed, which is 21 degrees. 90 minus 21 is 69. And we'll take that and slant our view by that amount. So let me take that line. Okay, now that we've slanted the lines, can you see that the part that is made visible is now going through a number of different colors, which is hopefully then going to average out the color again and give us full color. So this is what happens The bottom one here, I'm just going to show you which one I'm talking about. So the bottom one here that I'm highlighting is going through the blue color. So let's draw that blue across the entire lenticule, because that's what's going to be visible there. Then at this place here, it's going to be the green that's made visible. So let's go through and highlight across the entire lenticule the color that it's going to be at that place. And then up here we're going to have the red, because the line is crossing through the red, and we're going to have that entire span of that lenticule in red color. Okay, so let's just move this across as well, because the thickness is now slanted, right, just to tidy things up. So what we end up having is a effective pixel that is made up of all colors. That then produces, on average, the color, the blended color that we want. It now uses, however, and I will show this on here, it uses up 3 pixels in the vertical direction, and we already know that we are using up 5 pixels in the horizontal direction. 5. So we have already established then that we lose 5 pixels in the horizontal direction. But we now also know that due to this blending of the subpixels in the vertical direction, we also lose 3 pixels in that direction. This leaves us with an apparent resolution of 592 by 480 pixels. So that ends up being somewhere close to VGA resolution, which is 640 by 480 pixels. Okay, so we've looked at why the lines are slanted on this lens. There's another thing I want to talk about, and that is not really anything to do with the lens itself, but with the software that Mopic have decided to write to enhance this even further. And that has to do with the camera on your mobile phone. When we put this on the mobile phone, there's a front-facing camera, and it actually looks at your eyes. And it looks at where your eyes are looking. It looks at the angle that your eyes are looking at the screen. And I'll show you why that is important. To do that, I'm going to show you a printed lenticular here, a printed lenticular image. And what you'll notice, this one has many views, but what you'll notice is that when you angle it to a certain extent, it repeats. And vice versa, if I go the other way and angle it this way, it repeats. And at that point of repeat, your left eye and your right eye are swapped for that transition, and then everything is okay again for the rest of the views. Now, when you only have 2 views, you have that situation 50% of the time. So if you did nothing more than just put this on top of an image that is rastered so that you can see the left and the right eye, you would have that situation of eye reversal 50% of the time if you were just randomly looking at the phone. You'd have to find that sweet spot where you're just right, your left eye shines into your left eye and your right eye shines into your right eye, and if you go too far, then of course it reverses. So you have to be right in that sweet spot. But that's obviously only going to happen 50% of the time. How can you avoid that? So what Mopic did is to track your eyes, like I said. And they shift the underlying image to such an extent that it will track your eyes. That's quite clever. It has great potential, in my mind, for other things as well. I'll talk on those in just a moment. But let's just have a look at how that tracking of the eyes work. Okay, so let's have a look what this eye tracking looks like when we look at the application on the mobile phone. So I've got the phone here, and I've got it in the non-tracking mode, and as you'll see, as I transition back and forwards into different views, it does this swapping between the left eye and the right eye that I was talking about. Now let's turn the tracking on, and I'm going to have to face the other way because it has to see my eyes in order to track them. Okay, so I'm going to take this here, and unfortunately that's going to be a little bit further away from you, but hopefully you can see that the image doesn't flip like that. So it has to recognize my eyes, that red light has to go off. And now I'm going to just tilt it, and the image stays the same, it doesn't flip. It's very nice. Okay, there I think it's got a problem somewhere with something in my background, it can't recognize my face. And as soon as that happens, you can see it glitching. But as long as it recognizes my face, it stays very smooth. Very nice. Now with this feature of this eye tracking, I see the potential for this to be expanded into something really exciting. If this application can track my eyes, then can it not also dynamically on the fly produce different views? And if it does that, then you would be able to virtually, not really, because it can only display 2 views at any given time, but it could virtually simulate holographic viewing, just like a light field display. So as I turn the mobile phone in one direction, rather than having the same image, you could adapt that image to that view and show the image for another view. So you could have as many views in these directions as you want, limited obviously by the pixel density that is underneath this. But in my mind, that is a really exciting possibility that I wish that Mopic would take up and built into their application. Just another note on that, those views can be generated either by having them already preloaded as multiple images, such as multiple photographs from different angles, or on the run by rendering 3D models out in real time in different views. And again, as I said, if Mopic did that, that would be really exciting.